And we're back on Central Valley Talk again. Thanks for spending some time with us on this 2 days before Christmas. I can't believe it's going to be Christmas already. But we're going to talk law right now with Mark W. King, criminal defense attorney here in the Fresno area. Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays, Mike.
Is the courthouse still open today?
Yes, it's open today.
But they'll shut down for
Things
Christmas
slow
Eve.
down a lot the last couple of weeks of the year.
But crime doesn't stop.
Well, it doesn't, but the courts stop. And if people aren't in court, they generally aren't calling looking for an attorney. So that's bad.
Yeah. All right. Today you want to tell people about why they should not talk to the police unless they have an attorney with them.
That's right. That's what police officers, judges, prosecutors, they teach their kids that. They teach their kids that if somebody in law enforcement asks you, do you know what time it is? Your response is, I want an attorney. And
Really?
you shut up.
If I'm stopped for a traffic ticket, I should say absolutely nothing to the officer? Just take the ticket and drive away?
The only thing I would recommend that you say to an officer if you get pulled over and they say, do you know how fast you were driving, or you were driving 65 and other, I say, I didn't realize I was doing that. I wouldn't say anything other than that. Obviously give them your license, show them your registration, but nothing you say is ever going to help you in a situation like that. Things you say could hurt you. Even things that you don't say could hurt you. Your demeanor. Because police officers in a traffic stop is one of the situations where they might do this. They might write down your demeanor. They'll write down things that may or may not be true. I had a client who was sleep driving on Ambien and hit a tree. Now, the officer obviously thought he was drunk. The officer put on his police report there was a strong odor of alcohol coming from this man. The blood test came back from the hospital. There was no alcohol in his system at all. But officers, there are plenty of good women and men in law enforcement. I know that for a fact because I've had people in law enforcement come to court and tell the truth, even when the truth wasn't good for the state, and I've had cases kicked out because of that. There are also officers who will be very creative in writing their reports. And you don't know what they're going to put down. If you talk to a police officer, that officer can write down and say anything he or she wants to say that you said. And if it comes down to it in court, who do you think a judge or a jury is going to believe, the police officer or you?
Well, the scenario has kind of changed now because a lot of police wear body cameras, and you can call that up and ask for that to be shown, correct?
Yeah, yes, and that would be ideal if all police officers had those, because it would clear up a lot of confusion and it would clear up a lot of BS, quite frankly, on both sides.
Are Fresno PD has them or not? Or they're slowly coming on?
They're coming on. I don't think every officer on the Fresno Police has them.
But you think all law enforcement should have them?
Oh, yes, and the technology is very inexpensive, and it would save a lot of time and trouble in the court system and also save the city from potential lawsuits in a couple of ways. Number one, they could prove what did or didn't happen if the camera's going. And number two, if the police officer knows he or she is on camera, I think they're more likely to behave.
You would think.
You'd hope so.
Yes.
Now, sometimes in some other jurisdictions, some of these cameras have somehow not been functioning properly during the stop. Well, I don't necessarily believe that. But if the officer knew that they were on camera, you would think they'd be more likely to do things the right way.
I don't know what to say. So your natural inclination is when you want to trust the police, and if you're stopped or something happens, you want to talk to them. But give me an example of how that can get you into trouble if you do talk to the police and say something you shouldn't.
Well, let's say that you didn't do anything wrong, and you give the police officer a story. Well, a couple of things can happen. Number one, the police officer could change your story when they write the report. They could say that you said anything that they want to say you said. Let's say they don't change anything in your story, but you testify later in a preliminary hearing or a trial. It's virtually impossible to tell the same story the same way 2 times. You might get something a little different. The prosecutor could use that to try to make it look like you're lying. Well, we can't believe John Smith because obviously he lied. He changed his story. They'll do anything they can to try to make you look bad. They can't do that if you say, I want an attorney, and then shut your mouth. The Miranda rights look really good on TV, and they look good in movies. In real life, it's not the kind of protection you think it is. because they only have to give you those rights if you are, quote unquote, in custody. And there can be arguments about whether or not you were in custody. Number two, the officer could lie about when they did or didn't give you those rights. But I had a young man, he and his friend were pulled over on the side of the road sitting in their car talking. I used to do that when I was 18, 19, 20, talk with a friend on the side of the road. Police officer comes up behind them, turns on his lights, comes up to see what they're doing. My client was acting nervous. The officer asked him to get out of the car. My client was shaking and nervous. He said, "Do you have anything on you that I need to know about?" This young man said yes. He had meth on him. He had meth paraphernalia on him. Fortunately, all of that was thrown out in a preliminary hearing because the officer did not read this young man his Miranda rights. The officer was saying he wasn't in custody. The officer was saying, well, he was free to go. If you're 18, 19 years old and a cop car is behind you with the lights going, I don't think anybody thinks they're free to go if they want to. They are in custody.
Well, should you ask, am I free to go if I was in that situation?
That's a very good question, because then the officer has two choices. They can either tell you you're free to go, or they can arrest you.
But you then put it in their lap.
Yes, you can say, am I free to leave?
And if so, I can get in my car and leave.
Absolutely, or walk away. You're under no obligation to ever talk to the police for any reason. And if you are not in custody, you should be able to walk away. And the standard for that is what a reasonable person in your position think that they're free to leave. Even in my 50s, if I'm pulled over on the side of the road, there's a police car behind me with their lights going, I don't think I'm free to just drive off if I want to. I think they're going to consider that flight. They're going to chase after me. So asking if you're free to leave is a very good question, and that's one of the few things that I think would be appropriate to say to a police officer without an authority.
How recently have you been pulled over?
Oh, I'd say within the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Probably.
Did you say I'm an attorney? Or did you just wait to see how it played out?
No, I simply, the officer gave me some speed I was driving. I said I didn't realize I was doing that, gave him my license, registration. I scheduled a court hearing hoping that he wouldn't show up, because if he didn't show up, the case would have been dismissed.
Is that true, really?
Yes.
If they don't show you, it is dismissed?
It is.
Okay.
And unfortunately, he showed up, so I didn't dispute.
Did you have a good attorney?
I didn't dispute that I was speeding, but I was hoping that he might not show, but he showed.
So the line is, if you're stopped for speeding, I didn't realize I was traveling that speed.
That's what I say. That's not an admission of
Right.
guilt.
It's a very
It's not.
innocuous statement.
Yeah, it's an innocuous statement. But and also, I think it's really good if you get pulled over, go ahead and roll your window down, put your hands at 10
Right.
and 2 on the steering wheel so they can see your hands, because there are some real nutcases out there. It's good if you demonstrate through your physical actions that you're not a nutcase, you're not a danger to them. But I would never recommend trying to give an explanation or saying, well, I was in a hurry because I needed to go to the bathroom or something. That's not going to help you. That's not going to impress them favorably one way or the other. Just take the ticket, schedule a court date, and hope they don't show up for a speeding ticket.
I'll remember that. Okay. I always like to ask criminal defense attorneys, because sometimes I get a straight answer and sometimes I get the runaround. So let's see how you handle it. You know some of your clients are guilty.
Some, yes.
But everybody is entitled to a defense, right?
Yes.
Even if you know deep down that they're guilty.
If you know someone is guilty, they are entitled to a defense. It does tie your hands in terms of some things you can or cannot do at trial. So,
But you never ask your client, did you do it, right?
no, I never ask that. I say, what's your story?
And you can suspect they may be guilty.
I really try not to think about it because I don't want to know. Now, some clients will tell me, I did this, I want to take my medicine, and we try to make the medicine as palatable as possible.
Okay.
And that's good, and I respect that.
It's probably the minority, though.
Yes.
Yeah. They're
And
paying
some-
you to try to get them off.
And I explain to people sometimes when they start to blurt out, when I meet them for the first time and they start to blurt out, I stop them and I say, wait, I need to know your story. I need to know what's going on, what's your side. And, most people, most of the people that I represent maybe they did something that was this stupid, but the state wants to make it sound that stupid. So we have to spend time getting it back to where it really should be. And I have represented people who were absolutely, totally, 1,000% innocent. I've represented people who the state didn't know 10% of the things that these folks were into. So
You've
it's
seen
all
both.
over the spectrum.
All over the spectrum. All right. Well, good answer, Mark. All right. If folks want to reach your office, how can they do that?
Well, they could Google me, Mark King, Fresno attorney. My phone number is 237-8880. I never guarantee anybody any result, but I do promise them that I tell them the truth and I work hard. Those are the only two things I can really
All
control.
you can ask. All right. Well, Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays. All right. Mark W. King, criminal defense attorney, right here on Central Valley Talk.